Hey guys, it's your coach Greg D here, back with another video, and today's video is going to be something a little different that I usually post on my channel here. Today I'm actually going to start vlogging, so I can share with you guys more of, aspects of my personal life as opposed to just, shoving my, philosophies about life in your face and talking to you about Beachbody. I thought it would become better if I started to share, like I said, more of my personal life with you guys. And actually, the first one here is going to be talking about my story for those of you who don't really know me, and some research that I have been getting my hands on, especially in my current psychology class. For those of you who don't know, I am actually going for my master's degree in psychology with a concentration in industrial and organizational psychology. But there was some research that I've been getting my hands on lately that kind of makes me ponder about my life and, certain aspects of my life. So I kind of wanted to share that with you guys as I'm going to be starting let's say a weekly vlog series here. So basically, what I want to share with you guys, for those of you who don't know me, and probably would never notice it watching these videos, is when I was 2 days old, I had a stroke. A stroke is basically a blood clot in the brain. Now, the chances of a stroke happening to newborn or infants is very, very slim. I believe the odds are 6 in 100,000. So I have always been a kind of person who has thought that all of this stuff is like related to my stroke has happened for a reason. Knowing that I was kept here for some reason, and you may believe that, whether it's faith or whatever you want to call it, or you may not. But for some reason, I've always had this gut feeling that I was kept here on the earth for some reason, because the chances, like I said, are very rare. 6 in 100,000 is, that's pretty rare chances. So obviously there was some reason, I believe at least, why this happened to me, let's say. So basically, with the stroke, I went 6 minutes without oxygen. I received brain damage in my right frontal lobe from here to here. So my right front quadrant of my brain kind of received a lot of brain damage due to the lack of oxygen. And that ended up partially paralyzing my left side. It's noticeably weaker. They call it, I believe it's called hemiparesis, which means it's a weakening of one side of your body due to a stroke. So I don't have full use of my left hand. And also that affected other aspects of my development growing up, especially motor skills. I had to go through speech and occupational and physical therapy throughout the first few years of my life. So I went from actually being way behind in my development. I didn't learn how to walk until I was about 2 years old, which is a little bit behind as far as child development goes, if you tend to look that up. But by the time I was 4 years old, I was able to read. So it's interesting how I feel like my brain overcompensated, and I guess in a way the stroke happening to me early on helped my chances of recovery, because after the stroke actually happened, the doctors were telling my family that I was basically going to be a vegetable. I wasn't going to be able to walk, talk, ride a bike, play sports, anything. They were certain that I wasn't going to be able to do much of anything. So I think that the stroke happening so early on, where I really didn't know anything or learn anything yet, I think that worked in my favor, so that I could have the time to, go from being lagging in the development aspect of life to catching up or even progressing. Because like I said, I went from not being able to walk at 2 years old to being able to read by the time I was 4. So there's a 2-year gap there where I went from being way behind to, catching up with my peers, if not surpassing them somewhat. So I wonder if my brain overcompensated just a tad there. Now the reason why I tell you, my story is, so you guys know. But along with that, I've actually been researching. If any of you have actually had an intro to psych class, you might remember this name. It's one of the most famous names associated with neuroscience, and a lot of, like I said, intro to psych classes will discuss it. And that is the case of Phineas Gage, who was a construction railroad worker back in the 19th century. And what happened to him was he was a supervisor, and he was placing charges along a line of railroad track. And what happened is one of the charges detonated prematurely, and he had a javelin about a foot long. It was like a big metal rod that looked like a javelin. That was about 13 inches long, and I believe it was 3 or 4 inches in diameter. But because of the explosion, it got shot up through his face, up the left side of his face, I believe, and it went up under his jaw, past his eye, and out the top of his head. And this was actually, he survived, by the way, and this was actually in psychology one of the first real documented cases of how brain trauma can affect us. Because at that time it was thought that brain trauma really didn't do much of anything, and especially the part of the brain that was injured, it was the frontal lobes, like how I said mine was. So at that point, most psychologists would tell you in the mid-19th century that the frontal lobes really didn't do much of anything. Of course, now we realize that they play a huge, vital role in a lot of the brain's functions in cognition, in motor function, in speech, hearing, balance. So there are a lot of functions that go along with the frontal lobes of the brain. So the reason why I brought that up is because after Phineas Gage had this accident, many people who knew him and even his physicians would suggest that because of the brain trauma, he became a different person. There's a lot of information that says that he went from being a very astute, very confident, very well-to-do man. He took pride in himself, to after the accident, he turned into a aggressive, some would say somewhat violent, I guess short-tempered, started to swear a lot. He just became a whole different person. And these set of events caused, the more research into how brain trauma can affect us. I mean, we realize now in the field of psychology that brain trauma can have a huge impact on a person's life. I mean, you can have a traumatic brain injury and you can literally become a different person, personality-wise, and just, overall how you behave and act and think. And so brain trauma is a pretty big deal. Now, the reason why I share that story with you is I've always kind of wondered this, and when I was an undergrad, I thought about this when the topic of Phineas Gage came up. But and don't take this as me dwelling on my life in a negative way, or regretting anything that has happened to me or anything like that. But I almost wonder, and because I have actually discussed this with a few of my friends, and they tend to agree with me here, but I almost wonder from a philosophical, broad paradigm perspective, way of looking at it here, I almost wonder if the stroke could have, because like I said, I have the brain damage in my right frontal lobe, but I wonder if that brain damage could have possibly changed who I am. I always have thought that the stroke was one of the founding reasons and main things that made me who I am today. So I almost wonder. Now, obviously, I was only 2 days old, so we're not going to know how I was personality-wise, or how I thought, or how I behaved, and if there was a change somehow there. But I just wonder, and I almost think that because of that, I could have very well, like in the case of Phineas Gage, become a totally different person. So what I mean by this is the person that you see right now and the person that you are listening to could very well not exist if that stroke didn't happen. So if I would have had no brain damage, and if I was totally 100% physically fine, nothing wrong with me, not to say that there is right now, but you understand what I'm saying. If this had not happened, would I still be the same person? Now, like I said, this is not something that I dwell on and I'm looking for pity for or anything like that, but it's more of like a philosophical, like, what if? Like, what if that, didn't happen? Could it very well have been a different person? I mean, and even in the case of, Phineas Gage, where he went from someone who was highly well liked and respected and, hardworking to, a basic 360 where he was, aggressive and short tempered and was, in some cases emotionally abusive with his swearing and, foul language and the way he talked to people. And they said that he was a lot more carefree, I guess, with his money, gambling and that kind of thing. So I almost wonder if, there's that opposite ends of the spectrum, I guess, with the stroke and the brain damage, as far as, could I have become a different person? I would like to consider myself now as someone who likes to help people and is hardworking and is, has a lot of willpower and is determined and, is goal oriented. And is it possible that I might not have been that way before? Maybe I wouldn't have been so goal oriented. Maybe I wouldn't have cared so much about other people. Maybe who knows? I mean, I really don't know. I mean, there's no way to tell, but it's just something that I've kind of pondered, like, I wonder if, that would happen. So, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys liked listening to me share some of my life philosophies and some, aspects of my personal life here for the last 13 minutes or so. So, I am actually going to start making these weekly so that you guys, like I said, can get a more of a, inside look at how I am personally and what goes on in my personal life. So, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or message me. Make sure you like and subscribe as well. That helps my channel out a lot. So, yeah, guys, that's it for today's video. Like I always say in all of my other videos, like there's a will, there's a way, and I will see you guys soon.